Okay, so chapter 19 of The Science of Being Great by Wallace D. Wattles. This one is entitled A View of Evolution. And to date this, today is the Thursday, the 7th of July, and right now it is 11:45 p.m. Chapter 19, A View of Evolution. Excuse me, sorry, I just drink a lot of water right now. Excuse me. So let us continue. But how shall we avoid throwing ourselves into altruistic work if we are surrounded by poverty, ignorance, suffering, and every appearance of misery, as very many people are? Those who live where the withered hand of want is thrust upon them from every side appealingly for aid must find it hard to refrain from continuous giving. Again, there are social and other irregularities, injustices done to the weak, which fire generous souls with an almost irresistible desire to set things right. We want to start a crusade. We feel that the wrongs will never be righted until we give ourselves wholly to the task. In all this, we must fall back into the points of view. We must remember that this is not a bad world, but a good world in the process of becoming. Remember, things are becoming. Make sure to keep that viewpoint in line, because we are in a world of evolution. Evolution is forever happening. Okay, we have been given the ability as human beings, God's highest form of creation, to choose if we want to advance with Him or not. Remember, the principle of power within you is God Himself, forever urging you to keep growing, to keep moving forward. Because remember, we are embodiments of this original substance which is conscious and is able to think and has embodied itself in you. You are an extension and manifestation of this substance in a human form. Okay, you are conscious. You are aware of things. You have the ability to think, and it is you and your ability to think which makes you a creator, and not just another mere creature on this planet. Beyond all doubt, there was a time when there was no life upon this earth. The testimony of geology to the fact that the globe was once a ball of burning gas and molten rock, clothed about with boiling vapors, is indisputable. And we do not know how life could have existed under such conditions. That seems impossible. Geology tells us that later on a crust formed, the globe copied and hardened. The vapors condensed and became mist or fell in rain. The cold surface crumbled into soil, moisture accumulated, ponds and seas were gathered together, and at last somewhere in the water or on the land appeared something that was alive. It is reasonable to suppose that this first life was a single-celled organism, but behind these cells was the insistent urge of spirit, the great one life seeking expression. Now remember, the cell is the basis of man. And if you haven't been with us in mental chemistry, okay, this consciousness is also filled with electrons. Electrons, everything material is made out of electromagnetism. Okay, electrons are the most basic building blocks of material, the manifested world. Okay, and as these electrons are pulled together by the law of attraction, okay, they group themselves together and then they start to form an atom. Okay, and then as those atoms start to be more and more grouped together through the law of attraction, okay, those atoms in turn get together and form a molecule. Okay, the molecule is the most, the molecule is the most basic life component, you can say. The molecule is the most basic structure that can maintain its own identity. That's what a molecule is, something that is able to maintain its own identity. Like hydrogen, like oxygen, those are molecules. It's molecular structure, okay? They're made of the same electrons, they're made of the same atoms. It's the combination of these atoms that form the molecule. And then those molecules in turn get together and then form the cell. Those cells in turn get together and form man. Remember, the cell is the most basic building block of man. And it is behind these cells. And if you haven't been with us in mental chemistry, we learned that that mind and body have their origin behind the cell. Okay. Let's start this paragraph all over. It is reasonable to suppose that this first life was in single cell. It is reasonable to suppose that this first life was in single-celled organisms, but behind these cells was the insistent urge of spirit, the great one life seeking expression. And soon, organisms having too much life to express themselves with one cell had two cells and then many, and still more life was poured into them. Multiple-celled organisms were formed: plants, trees, vertebrates, and mammals, many of them with strange shapes, but all were perfect after their kind, as everything is that God makes. No doubt there were crude and almost monstrous forms of both animal and plant life, but everything filled its purpose in its day, and it was all very good. Then another day came, the great day of the evolutionary process, a day when the morning stars sang together, and the sons of God shouted for joy to behold the beginning of the end. For man, the object aimed at from the beginning, had appeared upon the scene. An ape-like being, a little different from the beasts around him in appearance, but infinitely different in his capacity for growth and thought. Art and beauty, architecture and song, poetry and music, all these were unrealized possibility in that ape-man's soul, and for his time and kind he was very good. Quote, "It is God that worketh in you to will and to do his good pleasure," end quote, says St. Paul. From the day the first man appeared, God began to work in men, putting more and more of himself into each succeeding generation, urging them on to larger achievements and to better conditions, social, governmental, and domestic. And that's very interesting how he says that, because if we actually looked back to you know, the caveman-like age, you know, and remember how he was saying the practices of the cave dweller were no more evil than any other practices of nowadays. You know, it fit them for their time. You know, it was good for them for their time and for their stage of evolution. Okay, and how things are right now. Things are advancing, things are forever moving forward, but how things are right now is good for the time that is happening, and we are known to move into the age of Aquarius. And for those of you who are not into astrology, this is known as the millennium period, where it's the period for reconstruction and change. And yeah, we're in the age of Aquarius, where things are supposed to be changing drastically in this time frame. And continuing where we were from the cave dweller, you know, and his practices and habits, they were in a survival like manner. You know, that was their thoughts at the time. All they were thinking was about survival. You know, like, how are we gonna stay warm? You know, how are we gonna eat or cook? You know, what are we gonna do to survive? You know, that was their mentality back then. And then as they evolved and got better at doing what they doing, they started forming groups and you know, a culture, and their own community. And then when they got together as a community, they started working together. And then when they started working together, things became more in order. Things are more organized. You know, the men would go out and gather things and hunt, and the women would go in and make sure everything is clean, and they would gather water. That's how it was back then. They had their own thing. You know, it's the same way nowadays, just it's different. You know, both the man and the woman go to work now. You know, we don't. Our thoughts of survival is different. You know, like, we don't need to go out there and club something or go kill something, like go hunting for a rabbit, you know, in order to make sure we eat that night. You know, our fight nowadays is finding a job, you know, working hours, finding something for service for people. Remember, time is money, you know, and you can either trade your time in for money, Or you can create something, invest your time in something, create it in an ideal, and that ideal will invest upon itself and build upon itself, and then all the money will come into that thing in order to make it expand even greater for more people to grow from that specific thing. Building leaders. Building leaders. Book club. Building leaders. Build the leader. A group of people get together in a book club, talk about everything they're reading, growing together. Let's grow together. Let's get together. Let's grow, creator. Let's grow. Let's find out together how we're doing this. I know that's why you're watching these videos with me, because there's something you're looking for. Let's keep growing. Have you got your books yet? Have you purchased your books yet? You could find this book from $20 off of Amazon, and it comes with these 3 volumes. If you've been with me through this whole time and you're listening to it, there's obviously, because the information on there you think is very, very important too, especially if you actually made it this far with me. You're here to learn, you're here to grow, we're here to grow. We're here to learn what no one is learning, do what no one is doing, be who no one is being, because we were born to be something entirely new. You and me, creator, like I said, there's a reason why you're watching this video, because this information is very, very, very important, and a lot of people don't know things like this, If you watch The Instant Millionaire with me at the end of the book, I know I was actually talking about this in another video about reinventing a wheel. There's no wheel to reinvent. All we need to do is find the principle, the wheel that's already working in place, and then we learn how to work that wheel, and then from there add on to our own, innovate from there, because there is a definite principle for anything, just like there is a principle for mathematics. Okay, when we use mathematics, we are able to send a man to the moon. Okay, when you know the definite principle for abundance, when you know the definite principle for prosperity, when you know the definite principle for your own internal success and unfoldment of your own internal greatness, following your own principle of power, following the things which makes you happy, following your passion. Okay, because when you love what you're doing, you're going to be doing it better than anyone else. And you know what? You're not even going to mind doing it for free, because it makes you happy. That is how people create things, because they're doing it because they love to do it. They find what they love to do, and they build it from there. And then they remember that parasite, the study of the parasite who found that the plant it was thriving on was dead, and that if it didn't leave that plant, that it was going to die itself, and that this parasite grew temporary wings, literally grew temporary wings, and flew off of that plant, because it knew if it didn't do that, it would have died. Even the lowest level of life is able to take hold of natural law, and likewise with you. But the difference between us and that parasite is that we have the ability to be a master of the law. Jesus the Messiah was a man. He had godlike abilities, godlike powers, and so do all people, all men, all women, you and me, creator. We can do that too. All it takes is some information and a little bit of teaching and a little bit of the drive to find it. Remember, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. This promise is to everyone. We live in this ocean of universal consciousness, the mind of God, like this intelligence that knows all within itself, moves all within itself, and holds everything in its place. And once you make the decision to move forward, when you make the decision to move forward, This substance will make sure that it provides you with all the necessary requirements in order for your further advancement. Let us continue. And soon, organisms having too much life to express themselves with one cell had two cells and then many, and still more life was poured into them. Multiple-celled organisms were formed, plants, trees, vertebrates, and mammals, many of them with strange shapes, but all were perfect after their kind, and everything is that God makes. No doubt there were crude and almost monstrous forms of both animal and plant life, but everything filled its purpose in its day, and it was all very good. Then another day came, the great day of the evolutionary process, a day when the morning stars sang together, and the sons of God shouted for joy to behold the beginning of the end. For man, the object aimed at from the beginning, had appeared upon the scene, an ape-like being. Okay, dang, did I really read all the way down here? I'm sorry, you guys. I got so caught up in what I was doing, I didn't realize that it was all the way down here already. Okay, let us start from here. Okay, quote, "It is God that worketh in you to will and to do of his good pleasure," end quote, says St. Paul. From the day the first man appeared, God began to work in men, putting more and more of himself into each succeeding generation, urging them on a larger achievements and to better conditions, social, governmental, and domestic. That makes you wonder that the reason why we are able to think is because we have the majority of God's Spirit flowing through us. You know, like man is the most evolved creature. You know, it must be that it is simply because we have more and more of God flowing through us. You know, especially if it's a substance that thinks, and we have the ability to think beyond any other creature. You know, that's the connection right there. Like, there's no other explanation but just the fact that we have more of this substance flowing through us than any other creature. Those who, looking back into ancient history, see the awful conditions which existed, the barbarities, idolatries, and sufferings, and readings about God in connection with these things are disposed to feel that he was cruel and unjust to men, should pause to think. Hold on, let me find my... I want to get my phone really quick. Sorry, my room's a little bit dirty. Here. Idolatries. It sounds kind of like similar to idolizing, you know, like idolatries. The religious worship of idols, excessive or blind adoration, reverence, or devotion. Idolatry. Okay. So that is the definition for idolatries, for those of you that didn't know what it was. Should pause and think. From the ape man to the coming Christ man, the race has had to rise, and it could only be accomplished by the successive unfoldments of the various powers and possibilities latent in the human brain. Naturally, the cruder and more animal-like part of man came to full development first. For ages men were brutal, their governments were brutal, their religions were brutal, their domestic institutions were brutal, and what appears to be an immense amount of suffering resulted from this brutality. But God never delighted in suffering, and in every age he has given man a message, telling him how to avoid it. And all the while the urge of life, insistent, powerful, compelling, made the race keep moving forward. A little less brutality in each age and a little more spirituality in each age, and God kept on working in men. In every age there have been some individuals who were in advance of the mass and who heard and understood God better than their fellows. Upon these the inspiring hand of Spirit was laid, and they were compelled to become interpreters. These were the prophets and seers, and sometimes the priests and kings, and oftener still they were martyrs driven to the stake, the block, or the cross. It is to these who have heard God, spoken His word, and demonstrated His truth in their lives that all progress is really due. Again, considering for a moment the presence of what is called evil in the world, we see that which appears to us to be evil is only undeveloped, and that the undeveloped is perfectly good in its own stage and place. Because all things are necessary to man's complete unfoldment, all things in human life are the work of God. The graft rings in our cities, the red light districts and their unfortunate inmates, these who consciously and voluntarily produced, their part on the plan of unfoldment must be played, and when their part has been played, He will sweep them off the stage as He did the strange and poisonous monsters which fill the swamps of past ages. In concluding this vision of evolution, we might as why it was all done. What is it for? God desired to express Himself, to live in form, and not only that, but to live in a form through which He could express Himself on the highest moral and spiritual plane. God wanted to evolve a form in which He could live as a God and manifest Himself as a God. This was the aim of the evolutionary force. The ages of warfare, bloodshed, suffering, injustice, and cruelty were tempered in many ways with love and justice as time advanced, and this was developing the brain of man to a point where it should be capable of giving full expression to the love and justice of God. The end is not yet. God aims not at the perfection of a few choice specimens or for exhibition, like the large berries at the top of the box, but at the glorification of the race. The time will come when the kingdom of God shall be established on earth, the time foreseen by the dreamer of the Isle of Patmos, when there shall be no more crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are all passed away, and there shall be no night there. And that is the end of chapter 19 on a view of evolution. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Seek ye first this kingdom, and all things shall be added unto thee. God has given you all of His powers. Your mind is God's mind. And remember, the mind is your tool for creation. You have an imagination. Remember, from imagination there is idealization and there is visualization. Remember, idealization, the progressive success of the progressive ideal, the progressive realization towards a worthy ideal. An idea being a spiritual quality, an idea being a spiritual manifestation. You know, this camera that I'm recording on was first an idea. It first was developed in somebody's imagination. Remember, it has its beginning in mind and its end in form. Remember, it has to first exist here in your mind as an idea, and then you have to take the necessary actions to act on that idea to make it a visible, tangible thing. Apple was an idea in the mind of Steve Jobs, and he acted on that idea, and you know what? Look where Apple is today. Everybody knows about it. You have the ability to do the same thing. You know, just stay focused on your idea. You know, stay focused on the idea. Remember what visualizing does. Remember when we build the circuit within our own brain. You know, we're resonating at that frequency. And as we continue to visualize and to meditate on the idea, we continuously keep pulling things out of the ether. You know, God, the universe, keeps giving us the ideas and things that we need for our further advancement. Remember that principle of power that is forever urging you on forward. You know, and this principle of power, when you follow it and you start moving forward to doing the things that you really want to do, everything else moves and groups themselves in accordance to help you achieve your ideal. Apple exists now. The universe, Steve Jobs did his part, and God did the rest. likewise with us. We need to do our part. Whatever it is you want to do, Creator, you have the power. And whatever you feel you can do, that you have the power to do. Okay? So, form the idea, visualize it, meditate upon it, stay focused in the idea, because that idea needs to take root and become an unfoldment, okay? It needs to grow. Meditate upon it until it grows and takes hold on your mind, and then your mind will take that idea and start working with it, and then you will be given ideas to make that idea possible. With that being said, that is the end of Chapter 19 with the view of evolution. And it is July, the end of June, and we still have June bugs out here in the West. And yeah, that is the end of this video. If you liked it, please share and subscribe. And let's keep growing. And I will see you when I see you.